So the workshop is divided today into two sections. And the first hour-ish is going to be a discussion about how brands and producers can work better together. And I want this to be as interactive and as helpful as possible. We're actually going to do a breakout session towards the end as well, so that you guys can dive in deep with some of the subject matter that I'm going to be talking about. Along the way, if you guys have questions, just speak up, because this workshop is for you guys. It's not for me to hear myself talking. So I want you to make sure that you actually get everything you possibly can out of this. We're going to go over, we'll do the workshop, then we'll take a short break, and then we have some fantastic panelists who are all from different production backgrounds coming up to talk about their brand experience and how they've created successful partnerships over the years. Okay. So there are opportunities in every single solitary type of content to have brand partners become part of it. So whether it's a feature film, whether it's a TV show, music video, streaming video on demand, YouTube channel, influencer content, there are ways to make your content extremely brand friendly. And the first thing to really understand is why brands actually want to do product placement. So from here, is anyone here from the brand side today? One person? Okay. Everyone else production? Anyone something else? What are you?
Brand integrations.
Your brand integrations, perfect. And anyone else? What are you with?
I use blockchain to deliver brand funded promotions.
I'm sorry?
I use blockchain to deliver brand funded promotions.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. And anyone else I'm missing? Just so I know kind of who I'm talking with? Okay. So as a production background for all of those who are here, the majority of you guys, you don't get what brands are looking for. There's a massive disconnect between producers and brand advertisers. They don't speak the same language. The thought process is different. Brands are not about creativity. Brands are about control, black and white, delivery. And so it's very hard at the end of the day when you're bringing brands and productions together sometimes to get everyone truly aligned. And I've really made it my goal in my agency. I mean, this is all we do. I've been doing this for over 23 years now. Long time, right? I look younger, right? Maybe. So I've been doing this for a long time. My agency, I ran an agency for over a decade, started Hollywood Branded 13 years ago. We work with brands of all sizes. We work with Fortune 500, biggest names out there, down to companies that are just starting up. And there's opportunities for all of them to work within the content space. Okay. So why do brands want to do product placement? A number of reasons. The first, they want to get more exposure, potentially to an international audience, right? So some brands are only concerned about regional. They're looking at local talk shows, they're looking at local programming, they're looking at a very niche audience. Others are looking for wanting to conquer the entire United States. Still others want to make sure that they're global. And when they're looking at different partnerships and they're looking at your productions, they're trying to decide if what their wants are aligning with what you can deliver. Secondly, so this actually plays a bigger role than you guys might think. They want to be cool and they want their employees to think they're cool. So product placement, when you have a big partnership and content that ends up being viral and popular and cutting edge and neat, and everyone's talking about it, that's neat to have within a company, and it's not easy to have. They also want to make sure that their brand comes across as more legit. Now, this works the same way for productions, right? You guys want to partner with brands to bring more legitimacy to your own production, to show that, you know, you have the power, you have a prestige, you have something that is desired by established brands who can lend their own credibility to you. So it works back both ways. Brands also want to utilize productions because it is a heck of a lot cheaper to work with a producer and their content than to do a television advertising campaign or out of home or digital, right? So the CPM, cost per thousand basis of how many eyeballs are seeing your production content, way more affordable. And it's super important to know that. You also want, as a brand, to be seen very positively by viewers. So that means brands, when they're looking at different types of content, they're evaluating it as whether or not it's going to make them look better. So there might be a scene where there's a phenomenal opportunity for a brand to be front and center, but there's negativity in the scene. Maybe it's a brand who's conservative in their sex. Maybe there's drugs. Maybe it's just something that's a little negative and kind of a greasy ick character. They're not going to want to be part of that because of that, even though the content might be reaching an unbelievable audience and it might have an A-list actor behind it. So how that story is being told is super important. You also have brands who want to be able to build an off-screen partnership. So this is when you're thinking, Heineken and Bond, right? They have in-movie product placement integration, but now they've also paid $50 million to build a partnership utilizing all of their media, their television, their film, their digital, their radio, and they're driving that partnership. And so it allows their creative teams, their PR teams, their inbound marketing, their digital, their social, all of their different agencies to actually come up around one central cool story, topic, your product, production, and build legs around it. Then 7, they want to increase their sales. I could actually say that's number 1. I mean, every brand, that's all they're trying to do. There's no company out there who's not trying to increase their sales. But as content producers, that's kind of what you're trying to do too. 8, they want to be able to market to a niche group. So you have brands like Coca-Cola, Toyota, Dell. Typically, they're marketing towards a B2C, so to a consumer demographic. But then you have companies like FLIR. You probably don't know who that is. That's one of our clients. They're a thermal imaging camera. They're one of the largest thermal imaging cameras in the entire world, and they primarily do government and military work. Okay? Then you have brands like Westlaw. What's Westlaw? It's a legal online resource. They don't care about, the average Joe out there. They're specifically trying to target lawyers, paralegals, people in the legal profession who could actually purchase their software. 9, you want to make sure that your brand is going to be on a new platform to be seen. So instead of doing the tried and true, you're doing a TV ad and you're getting skipped over. You're a billboard and no one's paying attention to you. They're looking for ways to get into content and onto platforms where people can actually see you, that you're embedded. And this became really big a couple decades ago as soon as the DVR started, right? So everyone started fast forwarding through. So really big trigger why brands want to get involved. And what's very interesting, actually, is a lot of brands are not even realizing how involved they want to be in content until now with Netflix. Every brand out there wants to be in Netflix because they don't know how to reach millennials. Now, we have a lot of our team here today, including a lot of interns, and I've been asking them questions all morning long about what type of content they watch, what platforms they watch, right? They don't say ABC, NBC, Fox. They say Netflix, Hulu, maybe a little YouTube, but it's on their demand viewing, and they're not watching commercials. And that's what brands are encountering right now. So they're looking for more ways that they can actually get involved in your content and others and actually directly interact. And then number 10, it is sexy as hell to be in a movie held by an A-list or maybe even a B-list celebrity. Front and center, your water bottle is being drunk. Your watch is being worn. Your car is being driven. That is something that you can't get across in any other type of medium than content. Thanks. Okay, so our agency, we're super big on education. I've kind of taken education over the top. We do massive amounts of content. We do massive amounts of surveys, research. We've really tried to bring in metrics and numbers to what's going on so that when we're talking to brands, we can actually give them educated information on why they should be working with more content producers. 51% of consumers, when surveyed, say that they're impacted by what they see to purchase. And that's on a conscious level. So what about all the subconscious out there and all the purchase decisions that you make? And if you doubt it, just start Googling around after you see a new movie come out and see people talking about the eyewear, the car, the this, the that. People chatter about it, right? And I just want you to know that there's a lot of people who probably went to Starbucks over the last few weeks thanks to Game of Thrones, right? Tons of people. Yeah. So let's flip the whole conversation and talk about 5 reasons productions want to work with brands. Okay? You're going to see me do this today quite a bit where I'm flip-flopping between the two. 1, to save money. So when you're thinking about working with brands, when we get calls from producers, it's not because usually they want to save money. They're not thinking that way. They're thinking, I want to make money. Brands are here to pay me money. They're going to show up in my content. They're going to pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars to be in my film, my TV show, my content that I'm creating. Well, that's a really backwards way of looking at how you can work with brands. Over 90% of brands who participate in content are doing so on a trade basis. And they're doing it because they're allowing the production to have free access to their product. Now you're not buying water for your craft services. Now you're not buying phones for your cast to use. Now you're not renting cars. Now you're not necessarily paying for hotel rooms because you have it on a trade basis. So there's ways that you can work with brands to save money. Blackberry, who has been a client of ours through all of their up and downs over the last 12 years or so, they're one of those brands that started in this world of Hollywood. We started them in this world of Hollywood by doing a lot of trade out. And they became super popular in Hollywood. Everyone was using them. I mean, we were up against Apple all the time. And the reason why is we made product available. I had a warehouse full of phones. Still have a warehouse full of phones, a lot of old phones. Anyone needs old phones? I got a lot, right? But they made it so it was easy. And that's a big thing with brands and how they can be successful with productions, is because they make it easy for you guys to work with you, okay? So let's take a look at how much success Blackberry actually had working in Hollywood. Just not paying money, but loaning phones. A lot of examples that video keeps going and going and going. You know, they've had massive success in Hollywood. And it did positively impact their brand for many years. They made some other decisions that made it not quite continue on. So there's a second reason why productions want to work with brands, and it's because it saves them time. So think about your production, and you write a script, and you've written a scene that takes place in a kitchen, or it takes place at a convenience store, or it takes place pretty much anywhere. Just pick a place besides a boring room. You need real brands in there. And you're going to have to go out and purchase those brands or get those brands somehow. And so brands who are willing and who are actually ready to help you with that, it's going to let your prop masters, your set decorators, your transportation, your stylists, all those people put together production much faster. And again, they're not going to have to pay for it. It's pretty good. So this is something to show you that this relationship, which you might, if you know Don Draper's name, what I'm going to show you in a minute, at least what content, this started because 1960s television series, Mad Men, right? They needed the ability to have branded items that were period specific. I'm going to tell you, it's not that easy to go out and find things that are historical. You got to do some hunting or you got to create them, right? So we represented Canadian Club, Jim Beam Global. And we got a call, said, hey, we have these sets, you have alcohol, can you get us some period bottles? Called the client, hey, can we get some period bottles? Nope, they don't have period bottles sitting around. So our team, as their agency, went out, we created labels. Thank God the glass hadn't changed, right? But we recreated the labels and we made it period specific because it looked right that way. And this is something that started as a time saver, a need by the production. And as you'll see, it actually turned into something with quite a bit of legs. Set out to go do, thank you. We didn't set out. It's a really good case study, right? It's like awesome. It has numbers, metrics. It's really hard to get those things from clients sometimes, but this one, a reporter actually dug them all up for us, which was great. So it's really not something that a lot of times brands will go into a show and say, oh, I want to build a campaign. I want to do in-bar promotions. I want to run a digital campaign. I want to help get more eyeballs to your production. I want to help you grow. So what happens a lot of times is those partnerships actually come to life through starting with product placement, starting with no-fee deals, starting where it's just a relationship and you're helping each other out. And then you're able to grow it and actually bring something to life that's really magical. It's lightning in a bottle. It doesn't happen all the time. But it happens enough that it's worthwhile for producers and it's worthwhile for brands to work together to find that. So This is the reason why everyone calls us every day and we get so many scripts in all the time. Producers want to make money, right? So everyone's like, oh, dial for dollars, just bring us brands, we got content, no problem. Well, it's not going to happen that much. And we're going to go in a little bit later into this presentation about how to make that happen. But when it does happen, it's very strategic. It's because the brand has identified a production that is going to actually lend themselves to meeting brand goals, meeting their objectives, providing a platform that is going to serve well. And it usually does not happen for a TV series in their first season. It doesn't happen with content that's not helmed by a famous face. Brands are very reluctant many times to work with something that has the complete unknown. So that's why you see your franchise films who have so many brand partners on board. They're doing strategic partners left and right. They're paying $1 million to be in Transformers. They're paying $50 million to be in James Bond by Heineken, right? So it's not every production that's going to get there. And I really like when I'm talking to producers to let them know that you need to look at brands as the icing on the cake. They are not going to be the ones who are going to bring you your financial fundraising. You need to have your financials in place. But they are going to make it a lot sweeter if you have that. And they're going to be able to let you make your content even better because when they do bring dollars, you can plus up other areas. Okay? So this is an example. Bumble's one of our clients. Has anyone here used Bumble? Come on. Go. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Maybe 5. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. There's someone now. Okay. So Bumble is a relationship app. It started off as a dating app, right? It came on the helms of Tinder. It was founded by one of the same people who started Tinder. And it ended up becoming something that is a very unique app. It is something that allows women to make the first move. It puts the power of women back in their hands as far as dating. You don't get scuzzy, male genitalia pictures sent over to you necessarily that you're not planning on receiving. Yay! Right. Okay. So you're swiping right and you're choosing who you want to. You've obviously gotten there before. You know this. Yes. You all did not know the conversation would go this way, did you? So Bumble does dating. They also do friendship because they found out that after, you date, you marry, what do you do with all this data that you have? Because Bumble's really a data company, right? That's what all these apps are. They're taking our data and they're reselling it, they're repurposing it, they're finding ways that they can use it for market research. That's what every app out there is doing. That's where they're making a lot of their money. So, but now they're like, oh, we have all this information, we have something that's fantastic, they're dating, they're married, oh, goodbye, nice knowing you. So they came up with, once you're married, it's hard to meet women to be friends with. So now we have a relationship friend finder app, BFF, okay? That helps, right? That's how they went, that's the direction. Then they went in the direction of, LinkedIn's out there, but for the millennials, there's a better way for them to be connecting. Let's do kind of a LinkedIn business connector. We already have the people who are dating, we have the people who are married, we have people who are BFFs. Let's take it into the business level. So that's what they've done. And we've worked with the brand in different ways to showcase different levels of those apps. But in this one, we looked at one of the top performing series that initially airs on the CW, but it actually does incredibly well on Netflix. Take a look at this partnership. And they paid money. is paid for. You're not going to get that. You're not going to want to do that in your content, right? Unless you're getting money for that. But it's something that makes sense. And then you're also going to want to add on different legs to that, like we did with the in-app, where you could, swipe right, join, in order to actually win a trip to your favorite place that your characters are already at. So there we go. Another reason why, 4 reasons. Productions want to have lots of people see their content, right? You slave away. You create this content. It's glorious. You love it. You put your heart, your soul in it. But now you need eyeballs. So brands offer an excellent way of getting eyeballs over to your content because they can push you out through their email, through digital channels. They can add you into a media campaign that they're doing, an out of home. They can do a TV commercial around you. And so that's what you're seeing, and that's how studios, your feature films, have traditionally saved millions of dollars marketing themselves. Mimi Slavin, who's going to be coming on a little bit later, used to run home entertainment and then into domestic theatrical for Warner Brothers. And she and I have worked together for 23 years. That's a long time. Doing these types of partnerships. And that's where the studio saves millions of dollars that they don't have to spend because they're having the brand spend it instead. But it doesn't mean the brand's giving you the cash. The brand is using their own platforms to get their own consumers who you're targeting to watch and to you. So to get them to spend money to go to the film. So your box office goes up, right? To get more people tuned into your TV show so that you can sell more advertising. You can meet your numbers. So that's why that all happens. This is an example of a partnership with Pilot Pen. So we had the integration. We actually did do a fee-based deal in order to do it. You don't always have to with feature films when you're doing this, but with a pen that has a tiny little logo on the side, you have to do a lot in post-production, a lot, even if you do enlarged pens. So there's dollars and cost to that. And brands understand that, and so they know they're going to have to offset some of those costs as well. This is a commercial that we cut. We did the voiceover, we did the music, we did the editing, so that Pilot could run this on their cable networks around the time of the film's release.
My name is Rafe Kachadorian.
When one creative kid, creativity has
Good partnership going after the same demographic. And then 5, okay, sometimes working with a brand just makes your content better. It gives you access to things that you might never have otherwise. Or if you did have access to them, it might cost you a lot of money. Let's take a look at this. Science cameras that are valued at, $150,000, $200,000 to a production. You don't have to rent that. They provide the cinematographer to go along with that many times as well. We worked with Rampage, supplied a $3 million Pilatus plane loaded with thermal camera technology to be able to shoot the scenes over the quarry. So there's a lot of things that come up that really help productions. We have something going on right now in Africa that's all about animals, and it's a lot of animals. But they're using the camera technology. They've cut content for us for Facebook. They've cut content for us to use for FLIR's website, and we keep them equipped with the gear that they need. Let's listen to a director and why he chose to use FLIR.
Hi, this is Ryan Stack, the director of Route 94, My Love, featuring Jess Glynn. Just wanted to speak a bit about the production of this video, which we shot entirely on FLIR SC8300 thermal cameras. If you're not aware, a thermal camera basically allows heat to be rendered as light. That's the core of it. You can... Here, bye.
So if you look at all of this, it comes down to one thing. It's money, right? So brands are going to help your production save money, or as a brand, they're going to help you make money. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. So there's 3 important steps, though, to planning a product placement strategy. And this is from the brand's perspective, because you need to have this insight. Okay, so before they even say yes to you guys, they need to understand how the brand is going to be seen on screen. They're going to be looking at the brand image, how the screen usage is, how to safeguard from negativity, right? Secondly, they want to know the target audience. You need to be able to tell a brand who your content is going to be watched by. Super important. You don't have that, you can't pitch it. You also want to be able to tell them what types of content genres work, okay? So we get so many opportunities for horror films. Now, there's actually research that shows that horror films engage more highly because there's an affinity. It's called the teddy bear effect. You're scared, you want to grab that Frito Lay's, the Coca-Cola, the whatever product that's around you. And so if you see that product that's something that is part of your everyday life, you really take a notice. There's a heightened sense. Brands are not sold in on this research study. They hear the word horror film, scary, they think that's too scary for me, I'm out of here. It's very rare to see brands actually embrace the scary. Although I will say we do a lot, if you noticed, with FLIR and ghosts and Bigfoot or Yeti or pretty much any mystical thing, and they're good with it. So some clients are good. Okay. So there's also something really important here, and Courtney is going to be able to speak a lot to this. Alma's going to be able to speak a lot to this. They're sitting in our audience. They're going to be on our panel just shortly. I can speak a lot to this. Whether it's on the brand side or whether it's on the production side, you need to not go it alone. You need to actually find someone who knows their stuff. You need to be able to find someone who can talk the language of brand and who can also talk the language of production. So the reason why you want to have someone who actually is knowledgeable working with you, you want to be able to have them help you offset bottom line costs. You want them to help offset, to actually coordinate, and it would be helpful if I read, coordinate actual access across your production. So someone who's working with your props, your sets, your transpo, all those different people, so they're not siloed, so that you can look at building bigger partnerships and relationships. Because it all goes pretty much out the door. If your props goes out and they decide to work with Coke, and your sets goes out and they decide to work with Pepsi, and now you have both brands, and neither brand is going to support you promotionally. They're not going to want to share your content. They're competitors in that content, okay? And then there's also a lot of ways that just happen that brand sponsorship partnerships just accidentally get messed up. This is a real case study of something that happened to me. We got approached by a production. Great script, great cast, fantastic. They cut a teaser. They were ahead of the game. They're like, here's my film. Take it out, pitch it, find us a car. Our car has a starring role. There is such an opportunity. We are going to make millions of dollars in savings and costs and promotions. They're so excited. I'm like, script looks good. Okay. Looked at the little teaser that they created. Opening scene. Someone's drinking, they're driving. That's not going to happen, right? So when you're even creating content, when you're writing content, or you're looking at content someone else has written that you're thinking about producing, got to be aware of these things. Because if you're an automotive manufacturer, you are not going to allow someone in a car not wearing a seatbelt. You're not going to allow them to have a mobile phone in their hand. And if you have a script that talks about that, when you send the script pages over and you're like, oh, don't worry, we can change them. No, they read them black and white and it's out the door. So you cannot have dead bodies in trunks usually. I will tell you. I mean, you laugh, right? I actually did a deal with Lexus and Sopranos. I got them to do dead bodies in trunks. So you have to have a really strong property to make that type of thing happen, okay? Mercedes then ended up giving all of the executive producers cars, and our Lexus were out the next season. So there's that reality too. But you do need to know and be aware of what content you have that might actually offend a brand. Okay. Then the script breakdown. You know, you guys have eyeballs for it, but if someone who's in this space, when they're reading your script, they're going to be looking at, oh, you're in a convenience store. They're going to initially just think of all the thousands of things you can do in that, with the point of sale, the danglies, the fridge signage, the whatever it might be. And they're going to think outside of the box, potentially, for that. So you want someone who knows how to read a script and who can really envision in their head where all those branded moments can be. The kitchen, right? The bedroom, a teenage girl's closet. I mean, all of these things offer something. A locker. So you want someone who's able to read a script, because you're not going to write in, oh, she opens her locker and there's the Coke and there's the bubblegum brand here, but someone else is, if they're recognizing and they're knowledgeable in this space. Okay. You also need to make sure that what you show brands is as polished as can be. Because if you send something over that looks shoddy, they're going to think of you as being shoddy. You need someone who can pitch, and they can have an actual conversation. You know, we get opportunities all the time with people who are like, hey, here's my film, what do you think? And they let it go to die. They don't follow up. They don't actually dig in. You need someone who's good at sales. You also need someone who's going to be on top of tracking everything, because when you have your $600,000 of cost savings from all these different products, and you have, you know, your barn scene with this toolkit that cost actually $2,500, the production, you're responsible for sending that stuff back. And if you don't, you get a bill for it. And you don't want to deal with that. You also, I got ahead. There's also reshoots, right? So it's not only hanging on to things and getting it back to productions, it's also, oh, it didn't test well. Oh, we needed a different ending. Oh, just falling flat. Let's reshoot. So if you need to do reshoots, you need to build that whole world again and reach out to all those same brands to get the stuff back. They're not going to let you just sit on it for 9 months while you figure out how to edit your film. Then there's also product tracking, making sure it actually happens and you're able to talk to the brand or the product placement agency or the media agency about it. Logo clearance sign-off. Every time there's a brand in a movie or TV show, you need to have clearance. You can't just go out and buy it and put it in there, right? You actually need clearance. Contracting big deals. You need someone who can help you with this. When there's dollars involved, it is incredibly important to have people know where things fall flat. And there's a lot of ways for things to go sideways. And then, of course, conversations, right? Negotiating the money, negotiating the promotion, and then strategizing to build out the campaign. And being the bad guy and good guy. You want to be the good guy as the production. Let someone who is on your production be the bad guy. Let them be the ones who are following up, chasing down. It's always nice to have a bad guy and you not have to be that. making payments. How's the brand going to actually pay you? When are they going to pay you? Why haven't they paid you? Are they ever going to pay you? Right? So it also it's just about activating it, keeping it all together. It's a lot of things to juggle and keep happening. And your job, if you're a producer, it's not to do your brand deals. Your job is to make sure that everyone on your team is doing their jobs and that everyone's working together and rowing in the same direction. So quickly, 4 key ways producers can get creative on making brand partnerships work. Okay. So first, before filming. This is something that when we jump into a workshop in just a few minutes of sitting down and talking a little bit more internally with y'all, before filming, you need to look at your content and figure out how you can bring the brand to the casting table. There is a lot of content. Netflix alone has 800 to 900 pieces of TV content and film content coming out in the next year that they're shooting, right? It is a content landscape, plethora of so much content that you're drowning in content now. And if you're a brand, you don't know which way to look, so you're just going to look at the best of the best. And it's really hard to stand out. So what can you do from day one to actually say to a brand, I'm going to bring you on board. I am going to make sure that it's not about the final edit and having you on screen. You need social content. I'm going to make you some turnkey social content. We're going to have you're a beverage, you're going to be at the writer's table. We're going to post some pictures, and you're going to be part of those pictures. You want to start thinking about how can you start working with a brand from day one, because they can work with you to start building your audience too. Okay, during filming, during post-production, you'll want to do the social media content I mentioned. You want them to be able to repurpose. You want them to start marketing for you. You want them to start helping you build that buzz, right? There's something, everyone wants to go viral. You want that to start happening. You could do filmed backstage experiences for the brand. You could do an alcohol brand and they're partnering with you at their wrap party and you shoot some content and you give it to them for that, right? You could do, hey, it's brand day on set and we're going to set up some different activation areas and you can do some free sampling, but we're going to create content. It's all about content. You're content creators. Just keep on creating content because that's what brands need. Have the unit publicist help, right? This is missed so often. There's so many partnerships that happen when you could get a leverage of PR built in and people don't think about it. And after filming, make sure that they continue pushing it out. Make sure that, when you submit the film to a festival, how could they come in and sponsor that red carpet? How could they become part of that experience? How could they do a dinner series? And capture content. Pictures, video, content. Look for ways that you can find to bring that brand as part of your production as a partner, not as a one and done. Okay. Time of release. You could cut while you're editing a piece of content for them to use. Maybe they'll put money behind it for in theater. You have it. Maybe there's certain neighborhoods that they're looking for regionally that they're going to boost it for you, or maybe it's national. How can you make it easier for them? So you need to just keep this in mind of what can you do to make brands' lives easier. Because quite frankly, their priority is not sitting there trying to market your film and help your film. So how can you give them tools to help them market you where it's just literally turnkey? Here is something that we did last season and we have the relationship ongoing this season. Last season was on Lifetime. This season it is on Bravo. Very different production companies. Last season it was Bunim. This season Magical Elves. Last season it was Lifetime. This season Bravo. Treats things very, very differently. So know that when you're creating content, if you are the production studio, how you work with the network or this distribution outlet may actually be very different. And people are going to be willing to do different things. But the pen that I talked about, have to have a logo. Let's take a look at see all of the things that we did with just a partnership with getting the pen involved in the show. to make sure that they developed content pieces that the brand could then extend through their socials, their website, and across the board. Okay, so here's the important part. How do you actually get to make money, right? So if a production can find a brand who can help them save or give them money, you're going to have, a good time of it, right? Working with your brand partnerships, it's going to work. So each partnership's very unique and dependent upon making sure that the content's right, the creative team's right, the distributor's right, the cast is right, and that the other brands are right, that you don't have conflicting brands. And it can be more than just, it's a competitor. It could just be a brand that's doing a partnership, and then they're just totally not the same fit as another brand, and they're not going to want to be part of that either. So you need to look for things that are complementary and can be building on each other. And it's really great when you can find brands who can actually collaborate around your production and work together and do more social, more digital, more sweepstakes pricing, whatever it might be, and just make it very complementary. And you're looking at what is the exposure. So if you want money, right, or you want savings, what is the actual opportunity? Is it a hands-on? Is it an insert? Is it a verbal mention? Is it storyline messaging? What is it going to be that the brand is going to get? Okay. And then a really big part of all of this. Does everyone else want it? So dollars start being driven not by your content. Dollars start getting driven by if other people want your content. So you have to find a way to actually make it competitive so that you can become something that's wanted and desired versus just going out and naming your price. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left, I think. How long do we have? Okay, perfect. Yes?
I used to work in product placement, I loved it before I started directing. And what we got was free product.
Yep.
We never got any money.
Yep.
But again, it was wardrobe, it was food, it was shoes for the crew. And I was very good about always making sure it was on camera and getting the pictures. But now that I'm moving into bigger projects and hopefully online stuff, what kind of money, like for instance, that's a hit show, a big fat hit show.
Big fat hit show.
What kind of money do you think the pen people got for?
What did Pilot pay?
What did Project One Way get for putting those pens?
Yeah, so I'm not going to disclose exactly what they paid, but I will tell you. Yep. So when you're looking at network television, you're looking at integration, you're looking at $150,000 to $500,000 typically.
Per episode?
For a partnership, and it could be per episode. Depends on the platform. Depends on, is the show something that has advertising built around it? Is it on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and there's media? So now it's not just about, hey, you have to pay $1 million to be in Modern Family. That's what you have to pay. It's also about how much are you going to bring to the table to support media-wise. So $5 million, $10 million. Each network has a different requirement. Independent films, realistically, I think that's probably a lot of what y'all are in independent content, you are looking at tens of thousands to maybe like very low six figures. And it depends on the partnership. And it's going to have to be smack dab, totally perfect for the brand. Right.
So, one more quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I love how it was integrated with the backstage stuff and the contestants talking about it and stuff. Will the pen company, say for example, will they specify we want 4 of your people to talk about pens on camera? Will they be that specific, do you think?
Our agency will when we contract it, a lot of times looking for that. We're very specific about the type of content we're looking for. In this case, the production actually over-delivered. So they did a really nice job of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you go over kind of what genres, what products, what brands go with what genres?
Really, there's going to be a brand that fits any genre, right? So I think it's also looking at, let's say you are, your comedies are going to be embraced, your dramas are embraced, the biggest, blockbuster opportunities that are out there, those are going to be embraced. Horror, as I mentioned, is a little bit harder to do it. Documentaries, so hard. Can't tell you how hard it is to get brands to get on board for documentaries. They don't see it. They don't see the value. And if you're like, oh, we're on PBS, they're like, yeah, okay, right? So it really just comes down to depending on what you're looking at. But one thing to keep in mind is if you're looking at a brand category, you're looking at sodas, maybe you don't look at Coke. Maybe you don't look at Pepsi. Maybe you don't even look at Dr. Pepper. What about Fanta? Right? What about looking at opportunities, or Big Red? What about looking at brands who are not inundated on a daily basis, who actually are going to be more interested? The independent filmmakers that we work with that have a lot of success typically are not working with the top name brands. Usually they're working with, earlier stage brands, or brands that are very regionalized, and they're finding ways that they can actually come together in a bigger beneficial way. Yes?
Does the brand come into the conversation with wanting a guarantee of impressions and viewership? And conversely, does the production company or the production in general, when they're going out to look for brands, like put that as part of their pitch deck, and like saying this show is going to guarantee you this audience?
So the answer is no, productions don't do it, and they need to. And the answer also is brands do every time. They're looking at what that CPM, that cost per thousand basis, is going to be so that they can justify it. Because they're used to buying advertising, they're used to buying media. They're also looking at your content not as advertising, not as media, because they don't control it. They don't get to say my 30 seconds are going to be just about me. They're diluted. So they're not valuing you necessarily at the same rate as what they'd buy a 30-second for. Mm-hmm.
How do you decide to get involved with a project, or do you have a sliding scale based on what's an independent versus the...
As far as our agency goes? Okay, yeah, so we have a brand division, we have a production division. We take very limited productions on because it's a lot of work and not a lot of success for fee-based deals. Product placement, all day long you can do it. You can find brands who are going to work and do trade-off, but if you're looking at getting funded, it's really hard to find people who are willing to represent you, who are legit, who are going to find true dollars for you. So it's just, you have to approach it a little bit differently. And I know I said earlier you need a brand strategist to come on board, so it's like both things. But it's hard. You have to really, when we work with a production, they are really standing out, and they're showing that they're doing the work and they're willing to do the work to come up with innovative ways to work with brands, and then we'll consider working with them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you work with any fashion brands, and if you do, what specifically are there specifically or things that would turn them on or off?
Sure. So we do work with Lacoste. We work with Ralph Lauren and some others. As an example, with Lacoste, we partnered them with the first season of Queer Eye on Netflix. Right? Really natural opportunity. We ended up going in store. We ended up having all of the Fab Five wearing Lacoste. So there are opportunities. You can also, wardrobe is something that is needed. It's how good is the logo? I mean, what happens to us a lot of times with Lacoste is, we'll be working with a producer and we're like, we're willing to pay. We'll give you money. And the producer's like, well, I like everything that doesn't have a logo on it. Yeah, that goes over really well, right? It's like, come on. Great, you like that shirt, that dress, and it has no little logo. So that's part of looking at it. So when you're working with wardrobe and you're working with clothing, is it something that's going to be visual and stand out on screen? And if it's not, it's harder to work on. So then you need to look at, can you have a shoebox? Is there a bag that you can put in? Is there a website you can look at? Is there an app? Look to see what the different opportunities are. We were talking this morning with a QSR, a quick serve restaurant. And, they used to do a lot with promotions, supporting films, and they've gotten away from doing that. But what they do now is they're really interested in getting their app to be featured. They want people to know they can go to Grubhub or Uber Eats and that they can order this food and get it to them. Because that's how people are really interacting with them now. It's on demand. So it's digging in and looking to see what might be a little less expected than what you would think versus just, you walk into a mall and then there's the brand. So packaging for them, that's something, but that app, they're willing to pay money for. So,
Oh, hi.
Hi.
My name is Cheryl.
Hi.
And there are companies out there that say they're LGBTQ friendly, but they're only friendly at Pride Week.
There are.
Yeah, and then they disappear. And so...
But Bud Light's campaign's really good right now.
Okay. Well,
For the moment.
I'm glad you said that.
The moment.
But literally have a platform with 2.5 billion views at our fingertips right now. It's the companies are out there and they're saying one thing, but then when you approach them, this is great. I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm gonna learn a lot more.
Good. I'm glad. Yes.
So what would you suggest? I have a catalog of film. There's one group that I want to create a genre-based violent films. And so we're trying to find, advertisers towards that, like the horror type of thing.
It's hard.
It's hard. So what do you suggest?
It's hard. So there's, we used to rep a lot of the Nick Cage's films, like one after another, and they all had that edge to them. And most of the brands that we would get involved with it would be men's clothing that were aligned more towards leather, some automotive, alcohol on that. So the brands that actually have dollars that are really like they're thinking about this is watches, insert, right? Potentially soda companies, okay, beer. 100% going for that male demo. Male demos are hard to get.
But so these are already done.
Mm.
So, it's going to be OTT, so we can put advertising. Actually, if we can do whatever we want, we can put some sponsorship in the front, presented by, whatever.
What type of additional content could you cut together for them potentially? Think of it from that direction. So.
Well, I'd like to, because we have a team that we're going to go after this, just this one particular genre for this group of, we do children, we do film, comedies, action comedies, we do, a mixture of different genres, but this is particularly just one group of people, and it's a large.
So you probably need to come up with what's your social influencer strategy, targeting males, and how could you get these brands on board, cut content for them, include them in your social influencer strategy of getting them out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's all content driven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stacey,
Yes.
could you talk about animation and how, either if it's 12 minutes or short or half an hour, what's your strategy is as far as that?
So animation, obviously you need to go far out in planning stages so that you can actually bake in the brand into that. It depends if you're family, if it's very young targeted children. There's definitely opportunities for that. There's a brand for everything. So
Who would you partner? Like it will go towards
you're targeting.
The toy that might be.
Yeah, so you could be looking at a Hasbro, you could be looking at a Mattel, you could be looking at, there's different regulations now, like Kellogg's, when I used to rep them, we could only go after super family-friendly programming, and then everything hit the fan, and you couldn't target and market to children anymore, so then we could only go after adult programming. I mean, that was like a 180 shift, right? So you have to look at kind of where the brands are. You're targeting to moms. And you're targeting to moms who are going to be watching, and you're trying to get them to purchase. So what are the brands that are using in their everyday life that you could approach to become part of that content?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So what I'd like y'all to do, I know we're really out of time, we're coming up to it, is as a production, I want you to think about what do you have to actually offer brands? Okay? If you're a brand, the one that we have in here, what do you have to offer productions? Okay? And think about why a brand would actually care about what you have to offer. Okay? It's not just being on screen anymore. It has to be something a little bit more. Also think about, is it enough? What can you do to plus it up? How can you blow it up a little bit bigger? Because this is not how most producers are thinking. And this is how you are going to get more brand partnerships. Also, what are the deal breakers? Driving the car with a dead body while drinking, deal breaker. So make sure your content doesn't have that, right? And then what else could you provide? It's that ever question, what else? What more? What else? Keep on thinking. And when you actually do get into a conversation with a brand, ask them what's important to them. And they're not going to be production savvy. They're not going to think of all the things that you could do for them unless they are a top performer brand who's doing a ton of content and partnerships. But most of the brands that you should be going after are probably the little bit lower tier levels, and they are not well versed. They're not experts in the space. But they know that they don't have enough time to do stuff. They don't have enough money to do stuff. They need content. They need a way to engage. They're trying to get a demographic of millennials, because everyone's trying to get millennials, right? So what can you do? How can your content actually help them accomplish that goal? Yeah. Does anyone have a production that you started it off? I was originally going to have more time and have you all divvy up into groups, but does anyone have a production that you kind of want to throw out and you get to tell us what you think you could do? Okay?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a film based on stalking, and I'm partnering up with, the National Stalking Association and organizations in the nonprofit spectrum to place them in the film.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the first basis of me doing partnerships. And I'm also looking at product placement companies. My understanding in marketing, the top 3 product placement companies are cars, alcohol, and cell phones.
Depends what you're looking for. I mean, is it product that you're trying to cost save on?
No, it's product we're trying to leverage the celebrities in the film or the directors in the film to get more funding for the film.
You're trying to get dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So watches, soda, beer, automotive, those are going to be the ones just because they're the big media buyers, right? They're already spending. So, it would make sense if they could just cut a little bit off for you. You could do so much for them, right? But they're not always thinking that way.
Right.
Yeah.
They have their own rules. They kind of want me to change things around.
Yes.
They know what works. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always going to want you to change. And that's the more important thing you guys have to realize. You have to have a conversation. This is not a you give to me. It is something that's going back and forth. It is an equal opportunity here. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. I scratch your back some more, you scratch my back some more. We build a partnership together. That's what you're trying to do.
I apologize if I missed anyone's asking something similar, but how do you control for getting away from creative content when the brand kind of takes over?
Well, you don't want that to happen because, you're creating content, right? And you will always have brands. I mean, we have had clients who, they know what they want, they know what they want, they know what they want, and they know what they want. And you have to gently push back, right? And you have to, though, figure out where can you meet. So it's just like any relationship. Person A wants this, person B wants something totally different. How do you come together without ruining the content that you're creating? Because you all are very creative. You all are bringing an art form. And this is why, programmatic product placement, that's a big conversation and subject out there right now. It doesn't work so well because it messes up with the creativity process. You can't just plug a brand in because what if you have a high-end actor and he has celebrity endorsement deals with product A and now you're popping in product B? Yeah, it doesn't work. There needs to be a conversation. Or there's just so many different levels to it where it all goes south. Any other productions? Is it time? Oh, we have so much time. Yes.
Okay, so mine's hard, documentary. But I have a whole long list here of, I think, very good potential brands to be involved in it.
Okay.
Okay, my documentary is about bringing home the missing from World War II. There's 73,000 Americans still missing from World War II. This is an outstanding number. I've been researching this for about 10 years now. So I have some products, I have some productions, some content. And, okay, big one, Boeing.
Okay.
Boeing needs something right now, desperately.
Okay.
Okay, the B-17 is the most loved airplane of all times, built and designed by Boeing. Okay, most of my stories start with the missing from the Army Air Force, and with the missing who flew on B-17s because they were 10-man crews. If the plane went down, you lost 10, and it multiplied. So, okay, that's one idea I have, but I don't really know how to approach Boeing. I don't want to actually handle that myself.
Right.
So Boeing, there's also candy bars. The men were always given candy bars to eat. And I don't remember them, but they still exist.
So what I would suggest, you can do that, and you can do your research, and you can knock on the doors, and you can try to paint a picture, and you can try to find someone in the marketing department, okay? You're probably going to have the most luck. I mean, everyone here is going to want to say, I'm going to talk to the chief marketing officer. They don't have time for you. They just don't. It's not going to happen. Go after like your director level or your brand manager. Knock on the door. It's something sexy, something different for them. So try that. And then for looking for other sponsors, look at veteran associations. Who's actually sponsoring them, right? What are the brands who are supporting that, who might want to actually extend their efforts in that? You know, you have something that's nonprofit that might be tax deductible for them. So go along that route to look for your charity opportunity.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Hi. I have a teen drama, very CW, freeform, kind of like that.
Mm-hmm. Millennials, it's friendly. Brands are lining up.
True. I was wondering if you would recommend partnering up with brands before we pitch to them,
Mm-hmm.
or do you think we should wait until it's already been covered?
So let's say that you're going to go to Freeform. They have their own ad sales team, and that's it. It's done. Your brands are gone. Let's say that you decide you want to do a time buy. You need the financing. You want the brands on board. So it all comes down to what you're going to do. Your networks are not necessarily looking for you to bring in brands unless you're able to say, Walmart's behind this. They're giving me $10 million. You have to do this. You should be paying me. Right? Right? So you need to look at it from how you're planning on distributing. You have an independent film, start pitching it now. You have a property that you're going to have to do a time buy on, start looking for the brands. If you have something that you think is truly commercial and you're going to be working with one of the major networks, you know, honestly, they're looking at, if you go out and get Big Red, and they're going to say, well, we already have this whole partnership with Coca-Cola. All that works out the door. Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on a production right now where the lead actress has a lot of medical equipment in throughout the course of the film, as well as a hearing aid. I've always just dealt with the soda companies for brands, so now I'm going to tap into that. So how receptive are some of these medical equipment companies or agencies?
Yeah. I repped Philips Medical for years. Every time you saw a monitor in house, in ER, we actually had the first ever open MRI system, a dummy unit, flown in from Amsterdam with engineers to build it out on the set of Grey's Anatomy. It's still there today. So you absolutely, that's the category. They don't get, it just, you know, monitor, they don't care. Hearing aid company where you could actually do something and create content for them, that might be something, right? And you could position it where it's not even necessarily about the eyeballs you are going to get them on screen, because maybe you don't know if that many people are going to watch it. Maybe tons of people will watch it. But what kind of content could you work with them? You have a production house, you have editors. What could you do to give them something that's cool and different, that's going to target the demographic you're going after?
So I shot a spec pilot that I created. It's a half-hour TV show, comedy. It happens to take place, it's a workplace comedy, at a commercial casting office.
Okay.
And the hook for on the business side is every episode will button with the 30-second commercial that we've been casting throughout the episode.
So it's like Blackish.
Yes, yeah. So
Same theme.
I'm trying to tie in that with going out with it, but I'm so new to this arena that I'm sort of at a standstill.
And you're going out, are you trying to do an OTT, or are you trying to do network television? You don't know anyone who will take you?
I just want to make it.
Okay. So you're really in the same thing as the teen drama situation. You go with a network, if you go with an OTT, Netflix is not, Amazon's not worried about ad sales. They're not worried about brand conflicts. So it really comes down to what the platform is. If you go to Hulu, they are. You know, so it just depends on where you're trying to position. If you're trying to go on any of the cable networks, if you're trying to go on any of the broadcast networks, you need to probably leave that open a little bit, script it. You know, it's a soda, but you don't need to bring the soda with you when you're doing that. Yeah. Yes.
I have a show that is a digital comedy series with fashion bloggers. So it's like SNL meets Parks and Rec meets Rachel's Ocean with real life fashion bloggers acting opposite.
We have team members here who's really excited. So we were talking about a concept like that earlier.
And we
you.
back, but I don't know if we'll have to, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are already doing it?
No, I was talking to some of our team about it. Not that, about the concept of that type of content.
Yeah, and so we're already, we've already shot, like, we're about like 60% shot for this season.
Okay.
And we're already working with brands. We have real life bloggers in the show who have like,
Great. See, your built-in marketing platform right there.
Yeah, but we're hitting a wall, believe it or not, with like our fashion brands. And I think it's because of like what you were talking about, where they're like, well, we're not sure what you're doing. It's like you're bringing this comedy. So we have most of the cast as bloggers, and then we have a few actors like playing office episodes, bringing in like that comedic.
You're not Sex in the City. You're not something that is super high-end, elite, it's comedic, but it's not safe. Sex in the City was a little bit safer for fashion brands, right?
Yeah.
And you're leaning towards where you have very strong comedic humor that could go different directions.
Yeah, we're like toning it, like, you know, because we're bringing in like, we pair the right blogger with the right brand for the episodes, so because we're continually like bringing in new talent.
Sure.
So we have, you know, people that focus on like high-end brands, and then we have, you know, some of our bloggers are younger. So I mean, it's like the target age is sort of like 18 to 35, maybe a little older.
Right.
We have some, you know, bloggers who are a little bit.
And your bloggers are willing to post about the brand, talk about the brand?
We're still in startup, so like it's negotiable.
Yeah.
Like it depends, like if we're paying them or not, you know, because obviously the bigger ones have really high fees.
If you can figure that out, we get approached by a lot of content that they're like, we have social influencers. They're going to advertise this show. They have bloggers. They're on Instagram. And then the blogger, the Instagrammer, the YouTuber, they don't want to touch the brands that are part of the show. So it doesn't really help that your show has bloggers in it for the brand unless they can actually do something with it. And it's very hard. It's the catch-22 because your bloggers also priced on a CPM basis based on their following, and it's more expensive than the amount of money the brand would actually pay your production to do one single stupid post with them, right? So it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, we're still like working all that out. We don't like, so we're like trying not under promise and over deliver at this point.
Sure.
So, you know, we're just starting to launch social media, and then we're going to launch, like, do a soft launch in the summer of the show, but yeah,
Maybe look at different levels of brands. I don't know what fashion brands you're talking to, but maybe it's more like looking at your Fashion Novas and your ASOS versus your Ralph Lauren's and your Chanel's, right? So where can you get creative where people are going to be more in tune? You know, you have your luxury lines who are all saying that they want to get involved with pop culture, that they want to get in with millennials, that it's very important for them to be this driving force. So why LVMH just did a partnership with Rihanna for her Fenty line. That's what's going on with that. But they also are not risk takers. They only want to be with A-listers. They want to have a very safeguarded, they have prestigious brands, and they are very elite. And so it's hard if there's an unknown for them to actually partner with you. But there are brands out there in the fashion world that maybe they're not quite in that same elevation that should be willing to work with you and open to working with you. But look again at the content play. How can you get them something content-wise outside of your show for their socials? If you can't offer them the bloggers and influencers that are working with you. Yeah. I hope that helps. Any other questions right now? Any other ideas about your productions? Yes.
How do we contact you?
You can contact me at. I have a slide. Look at that. So, is it hard to see? Do we need lights? Do we need anything? Okay. So, our email at our office is info@hollywoodbranded.com. So you can always reach out, and I can direct you to the right department or to me. Okay. We also have a self-learning platform. So if you're actually really interested in learning how to leverage product placement more, we have it learn.hollywoodbranded, which is in the program. Thank you. Yes.
And what's your phone, Trevor?
Thank you. It's on page 22, I believe.
Right.
Yes. So we have a full ad in there that will give you a 30% off discount to this educational material. There are right now over 20, I think there's 22 20 to 30 minute training segments on product placement and integration. There's 3 different levels. We're still loading more content up. There will probably net out around 35 to 40 segments on it. We write a lot. Our agency produces a ton of content. When I say that we do content, we do blogs, 5 blogs a week. You have free access to them, blog.hollywoodbranded.com. Do a lot of how-tos, training exactly how you should be working with brands. I have a podcast called Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. It's on iTunes. It's also on our website at hollywoodbranded.com. It has the first 100 of them was all about me training people on how you can do brand partnerships better. I got tired of listening to myself speak. I now interview people twice a week who are specialists in influencers, in legal, productions, in segment producers who work with brands. And so you can listen to that as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Anything? Good? Perfect. Thank y'all. And so what the next segment is we have 5 awesome panelists who are going to come up and give y'all a chat about what their experiences are, how they've found success in actually securing brands for their productions. So, you want to stick around? Okay, guys, are y'all about ready for a fantastic panel session? Yes. Sounds good. Okay.
Close that door. Hugo, could you close that door, sweetie pie, please? Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so...
Yes, he does. He's great. All righty. Perfect. Well, guys, thank you for coming in for round 2. And today we have a group of people who are all experts in having gotten brands to come on board to a wide variety of different projects. And so what I wanted to do is start off with everyone introducing themselves, giving a quick little background overview of where they come from, what they've done, what got them to where they are today. And do you want to start?
Oh, I have to go first?
You have to go first.
Okay.
Or you can go last. It's up to you.
No, do you want to go first?
Don't care.
Should we flip a coin for it?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I love being first. It's my favorite thing. Hi, my name is Mimi Slavin. And how I got here today was I was unable to fail up, so I had to work, which is not always the way it works in Hollywood. I've spent the majority of my career doing marketing partnerships in studios, doing things, starting with a brief stint at Fox, then Warner Brothers, CBS Films, Universal, and DreamWorks. And today I work as head of marketing and business development for a blockchain company that is actually revolutionizing the way we use IP digitally. It's changing the game in promotion, so that's actually very exciting. And I love now sort of taking all of that experience that I have with the sort of content side of things and being able to translate it into technology. So that's kind of my backstory, and I'm happy to talk about any of the projects I've worked on over the last only 10 years because I'm very young, but if you wanted to go back further, I am sure I could come up with
I
something.
kind of ruined that, Mimi. I said we've known each other for like 23 years.
Since birth.
You know, we met in the hospital.
Since birth.
Nobody heard that.
Yeah. Alma?
Yes, hi, I'm Alma Bogdan Turner, and I think Stacy and I have known each other for, 17 years, something like that. I'm a huge fan of Stacy's. We've worked on many things together. I fell into product placement or understanding relationships with brands because in my early 20s I started a clothing line and wound up it's so funny, everything has come back now 20 years later, but I wound up licensing the Adidas stripes, and we wanted to create a brand that would go from day to night. So Madonna discovered our brand in the nightclubs, and she decided to wear our clothes to the premiere of A League of Their Own. So all of a sudden I realized that we went from, I was looking for 10 cents in between the cushions, trying to buy a yogurt downstairs at the corner store to actually being on covers of magazines, and that was really a pivotal moment. So I went from there to the music industry. I worked for Warner Brothers Records and Reprise, then went on to work for Universal. And then I started working on independent film. I started my own company, PR and events company, and then I realized how important relationships are for independent films when you're still trying to make ends meet during production and after. So, and you know, many years later, I started producing my own films, which is where I am today. I still have my PR and events company, though, and work with Stacy a lot. Yes. So that's me.
I'm Daniela Polk, and I started out in public relations at Burson Marsteller when I was a baby, and ended up working at USA Broadcasting as Director of Corporate Communications, where I shifted into development and production, and came out to Los Angeles. The head of development at USA and I created a show together, and that's what brought me out here. When I shifted into production, I started producing and kind of merged my brand and production skills. And in 2003 or 4, wound up on season 2, 3 of Apprentice. And so that was really training ground, where we were doing a lot of branded integrations and at the forefront of that. And after that, I segued into producing integrations for television, for events, and have been doing it for a decade plus. So have worked on many shows with Stacy, all different networks, lots of different genres, mostly unscripted. And I'm currently working on Queer Eye Season 5 for Netflix, and which is, you know, well-loved, fun show, and, you know, constantly transitioning, going from project to project.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Jackson. Wow, I got too close. My voice is real high-pitched, so I sometimes make it squeak. So I work with Steve Harvey. I've been spearheading our integration department for the past 7 years. I was on his Chicago show, the Steve Harvey show, and then he brought me out here to LA to spearhead the new Steve show, which unfortunately is not coming back next year. I know, it's real sad, but it was a great run, and it was a big game changer for me. I got into entertainment. I actually started out in PR as well. Then I learned that you can't make any money in fashion PR, and I was like, F this, I'm going somewhere else. I've always been in sales. My dad is in computer software sales, and he was like, Courtney, there are 2 jobs in this world. You can either be a doctor or in sales. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm not going to school that long, so I'm going to be in sales. So from there, I actually moved to Chicago. I had a kind of a 20-year-old crisis of what am I going to do in my life? What do I want to do? I went to Chicago, and I went with the mind frame of I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to where I want to be. And even though I didn't know what that was at the moment, I knew that that was the mentality that was going to take me somewhere. So I had a friend who is a very influential executive producer who was moving to Chicago to work on The Rosie Show, which was a very short-lived season with Oprah. And she called me up and she's like, hey, let's get to dinner. Let's get some dinner. And I was like, okay, great. And she's like, what are you doing here in Chicago? And I'm like, I'm still looking for a job. And she's like, why don't you come work with us? And I'm like, what am I going to do in TV? And she was like, I don't know, PR, marketing, we'll figure it out. I was like, well, I've never been handed a job before. I didn't get handed it. I interviewed. So actually a week later, she called me and she was like, hey, Courtney, the other executive producer needs an assistant. I told her all about you. Can you get here in 30 minutes? I was like, absolutely, I'm on my way. And I went and met with her. Basically, long story short, I started off as the assistant to the executive producer. When you're an assistant, you get the opportunity to see every department. And there wasn't a lot about TV that I honestly really wanted to do until I saw the integration producer. And I saw that she had all these cool brands that she worked with. She got all this free product, and I'm like, I can get free shit. I get free shit all day long. Sorry, I'm kind of a cusser. My boss was Steve Harvey, so it was allowed. Okay, good, okay. And just one night when I was the assistant, I was getting her lunches, and I was the best lunch taker ever. I knew what she wanted before she wanted it. Because if you're not good at the small things, how can you be good at the big things, right? So I was about to go into her and ask her maybe if I could help out the integration producer just to learn the ropes. And the next morning, and talk about law of attraction, the next morning I walked, she called me in her office and she was like, Courtney, I know that you have a PR marketing background. The integration producer really needs some help. Would you be willing to help her? I was like, shut up! I was going to come in here and talk to you about this. Anyway, that started my career in integrations, and I started with Steve Harvey, and here I am today.
And she's brought in millions and
Millions
millions
of
of dollars
dollars.
to that show.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Justin Purser. I'm a director, creative director. I started out similar to you. I was an assistant to an executive producer in the music video department at production companies like A Band Apart and Anonymous Content, with the goal of becoming a director and learning from the directors. I guess like you, I got to see all the different. You get to see from the beginning to the end. Yeah, and you get to see projects from the start to the finish. So I did that for a while, and I ended up eventually writing treatments for the directors, and I got to work with David Fincher and Spike Jonze and Mark Romanek, and one of the directors, Jake Nava, I worked for. He did all Beyonce's videos, and so I would write his treatments for Beyonce ideas. And one of the things that came in was the video for Single Ladies, which actually came in with another song, and Single Ladies was the throw-in video that she just wanted to do. The brief was she just wanted to do a dance routine. So at the time, YouTube had just sort of started, and there was someone had taken a hip-hop song, Walk It Out, and they had mashed it up with a Bob Fosse dance routine. It looked like it was choreographed to that song. So basically, I just sent Jake the clip of that video and said, here, you should just show this to Beyonce. So he did, and long story short, that video was basically, Single Ladies was basically a recreation of that video. And then from there, it just went, all the people I known at the record labels knew that that was sort of my idea. So I finally made the leap as a director. And we also, at the time, budgets were going down. They're slower than they've gone down now, but a way to supplement was, that's when all the product placement money was coming in. That's why you'd see the video with the Verizon phone, and then Interscope actually took that to a new level, Jimmy Iovine with Beats. Yeah. And then when I became a director, it was right around the time Jimmy Iovine had started Beats, and every time I directed a video for Beats, for Interscope, I'm sorry, at some point, you knew at some point the record label was coming in with the headphones, and you had to shoot the artist with the headphones. And then what was great is the public had no idea. So anytime you saw any Interscope music video, which was Lady Gaga, LMFAO.
Sunglasses was a big one.
Yeah, Korea sunglasses, yeah. So but Interscope would make you because Jimmy owned part of Beats. And then he would actually bribe you with it too as a director. I remember I did this video for Eva Simmons, and I needed to do some beauty cleanup on her, and the deal was if I put another beat shot in the video, he would give me the money to do the beauty cleanup. So of course I did it because I wanted to do it anyway. So from there, I met a group of people, about 5 people in Venice Beach, that were starting a company called Maker Studios, and they were these guys coming in, and they were just doing these vlogs on YouTube, and and I had a friend who was kind of involved with it, and she showed it to me, and I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how these guys with a flip camera and iMovie could get 500,000 views on a video of themselves. It was 15 minutes long with them talking, and I started asking her questions well, how do they do this? How does this guy do this? And how does this one guy who has 4 kids and he makes a video every day of his life, how does he pay for his family? And she's oh, he's making $350,000 a year off YouTube. And I was what? I'm at first I was kind of mad because I was a starving music video director when the budgets had gone down. I'm trying to live off my unemployment and try any money I could to make a music video for low budget stuff on record labels, even at the time. And but I was if you can't beat them, join them. So I started with that company, and then one of the things I did with them was start with brands. If brands will want to get in front of this audience, because at the time no one understood what was going on in this audience. And my whole thing was these guys are going to backdoor Hollywood. They're going to revolutionize this whole thing, because these guys can go out and they can get more views and more of an audience than just almost any celebrity at this point. It's insane. So I started creating, I started kind of reaching out to brands and people I knew, and then I started directing and concepting the content that we would use, where we would get the brand money. I did one of the very first things we ever did with Planet Hollywood, and we got some money from them to create some video. And it was a time when flash mobs were big, and we created a flash mob video in their casino and made it look like they had nothing to do with it. And then Robert Earl actually went on to sell the hotel, and they actually ended up selling it for more money because that video created so much insanity for them. Yeah. So then I did that. Maker went on to sell to Disney for $1 billion, and I didn't get much of that, but because I'd already left the company. And then now I still do consulting on that, and I just finished my first feature documentary film on a pair of identical twins, and we're doing festivals right now. Daniel Tosh of Tosh.0 narrates it, which is kind of fun. And we actually got...
Which is really hard. You got quite a bit of brand partnership.
We ended up getting... I got brand money, in-kind money to finish the independent film. Or actually, without it, I wouldn't have finished it. So
And documentaries are so hard to do that.
Yeah.
So everyone here, so we have Mimi, who has such a strong studio film background, right? We have Alma, who has such a strong independent film background. We have Daniela, who's such an unbelievable reality television. You might do crossovers from that, but I think that's what I know you mainly from, right? Courtney, talk, and Justin, who has music, like it's all to do with music. So I wanted to bring together a really assorted collection of people so that you can see how brands can really partner with content of any type and learn from some of the people who are doing it the best. So can y'all talk about, real fast, in case I didn't do this, I'm Stacey Jones. I'm the CEO of Hollywood Branded, if you were not here a moment ago to listen to the first part of the panel. So do y'all want to share what some of the, biggest, and some of you touched on it a little bit, but some of the biggest brand partnerships that you have done, like that you've either done yourself or that you've seen others do within your space that you think are phenomenal? Mimi?
You want to start with me?
Sure, you started before. Why not? It's been a while.
There's a lot of really good ones. But I think what's actually interesting is, and I was thinking about this earlier, there's a very big difference between live action and animation in terms of integration. When you have a live action property, it's easier to be organic. It doesn't mean everyone does it well. The stuff that I've seen that I think works really well is the stuff that I saw at Universal that we did with the Fast and Furious series, because there's going to be cars, there's going to be tires, there's going to be motor oil, there's going to be things that are really organic. And so I feel like that really works, and I also feel like in that case, when we worked with GM, the way they sort of took the content and used it felt really organic, even as they used it in their ad campaigns. So I feel like, the more organic you can be, the more powerful it is for the consumer and the less distracting it is from the actual content. And I think that's something that you have to be really careful about, because if it's super blatant, it almost can backfire. And that's something that we actually dealt with a lot when I was at DreamWorks, because, and this was when, so the Chinese market was blowing up, and in China, it's a really big deal. They feel like they absolutely have to have product placement. I mean, it's so important to them. And I don't actually, to be honest with you, personally always believe that product placement is necessary to do a great promotion. I think it can be, but there's a big difference between placement and integration, and I think a lot of times brands don't really understand that. And it's not always possible to have real integration in something, and a passive placement isn't going to make or break whether you're able to do a good promotion. So I think sometimes you end up in these sort of crazy loops with partners where they're like, well, just, we have to be on the set screen for 2 seconds, even if it's in the background, and it's like, this is not going to make any difference, and you can do a great commercial that basically makes it seem like you were directing the movie if you do it right. And sometimes that gets very hard because it becomes very important to them. So when I was at DreamWorks, when we were working on Kung Fu Panda 3, obviously the Chinese market for that film was extremely important. And there's a brand called Yili, which is a milk brand, which is a humongous brand in China. And the budgets that they spend on promotions they're obscene. I mean, you dream about getting a commission on that. And they really wanted placement. And the problem with doing placement in animation is it is so obvious, and it takes you out of the story. There's just really no way to do it in a branded way that doesn't kind of jar you, unless it's something that is designed specifically to have brands, and Kung Fu Panda set in ancient China. So the compromise actually that we came up with was there is a scene where the baby pandas are playing and they're drinking milk, and in Chinese characters it says cow's milk in Chinese characters. It doesn't say Yili, but because nowadays there's so many different kinds of milk, and they were willing to do a big promotion in China that was sort of the compromise, and it took a while to get there. But what we had to make them understand was that it would actually backfire on them. It would look terrible, in ancient China, to have a milk bottle that said Yili. It was just going to be too weird. So, that's a lot about really pushing creativity and working closely with your partners to be creative, and not just say, okay, it's not going to work, can't do it, let's walk away, right? But also really looking for, okay, how can we figure out a way to make them happy that doesn't compromise the creative? And at the end of the day, no matter what the brand is, no matter how big the promotion is, if you screw up the movie, you've lost. I mean, you've lost.
Because nobody's making money at that point.
Because that's the last thing you want is the reviews to come out and it say, this is just one giant product placement. It totally messes up the story. You couldn't even focus on the plot because you had so many labels flashing in front of you. So, like I said, the stuff that is really organic, like the Fast and Furious is kind of the best stuff. That sort of, that comes from what the story is. There's certainly been other movies where it's a little more challenging and you can still come up with great stuff. But, when you get those kind of movies, and by the way, those deals are not easy, even though they're organic, they are not easy. Because no matter what you do, the brand always wants more. You can say to them, you're on screen for 5 minutes, you're in this chase scene, the car flips over 16 times and keeps driving, and then they say, oh, but I don't want that actor driving the car, I want the other actor driving the car. And it's like, well, the other actor doesn't drive in the movie. So it's always a negotiation.
Yeah, it's always a push-pull with brands and productions, and it's just meeting in the middle to make it work for both of y'all. Courtney, what about you?
So how I really go about any deals that I make is all based off of the content. So what I do is we have 8 producing teams, and they'll come to me with a story that they found. And they're like, Courtney, what can we get for this? And just to be clear about what I do at my job, there are 2 sides of what I do. There's trade outs, and then there's also integrations. And it's a sticky world because when you're under an umbrella like NBC, there are big paying advertisers. And NBC is always going to want a piece of whatever branding that you give to a certain brand. So a lot of times brands don't have the money to buy a whole media package in addition to an integration fee. So it's really a, going back to like what you were talking about earlier about the Coca-Colas and Pepsis, why don't you find a Fanta? That's where I've been really successful, honestly, is finding those brands that are, maybe they're kind of cool, or they're, kind of skating on the cool, but you can make them cool. Like, as a content producer, you have the say of how you can control that content and how you can position that brand, and if you can make a brand look cool. So if like you have a cleanse with this company called D-Herbs I work with, which is, it's a hard sell, but how can you make it cool? So I would say, to go back to what you said, my favorite integrations are those that are the most organic. So I'll give you an example. One of the producing teams came to me with a story of this girl who was in Sam's Club, and she was singing on the karaoke machine. Her friend like dared her to sing a song, and this woman's voice was out of this world. And her story went viral on social media. And the producing team comes to me and they're like, we want to do this story. I'm like, well, Sam's Club's got to pay if they want to come in. And we had 1 week. I had 1 week to close this, and that's actually pretty generous, to be honest, because a lot of times I'm calling the night before, as I'm sure you probably know. So we had 1 week to close this, and the most important thing when you're reaching out to a brand is you need to be able to speak their language. You need to do your research. Go online, figure out what their messaging is, who they're reaching, and really make sure that it's a fit, because you're going to waste your time and their time if you're calling and saying, I don't know, we could do anything, but you got to come to the table with an idea. So we had a segment called Put Me on Steve, and I came up with the idea of why don't we make this a segment called Put Me on Steve. We will make it as organic as possible. Sam's Club will come in as, as a partner, but how I made it organic was we were able to make it organic because she was singing at a Sam's Club, right? So it was like we had that natural, organic, seamless integration there where it was like, yes, like there was no way that they wouldn't want to do it, because why would you not want to get more press off of this amazing story? So I reach out to Sam's Club, I say, here's the idea. I'll have your logo in the monitor when we mention Sam's Club. At the end of it, I'll have a messaging point there. So in the script, I had Steve say, so what made you go, pick up the karaoke machine at Sam's Club, right? So it was that organic. So it wasn't like, so Sam's Club is the #1 box store. Why did you like, you know what I mean? It was organic and seamless. So then at the end of it, we gave her a check for $10,000 with Sam's Club the logo on there, and the entire audience went home with karaoke machines. So everybody felt like a win, which always is the most exciting when the audience gets involved, because when they start screaming, you can't help but feel the energy. It's contagious, and brands want more of that. And from that one integration, I was then able to sign on Sam's Club for a much larger deal for the next season. So,
Daniela?
I'm going to echo a little bit of what Mimi and Courtney said, of course, because organic is key. And also understanding what the brand you're working with and what their message is extremely important. I also, after all these years, really feel comfortable in, getting used to the power of no. Like, you have to be able to say no if something is the wrong fit, or if you're going to be shoehorning it in, because everyone is going to be unhappy. Production is going to be unhappy when you bring it in. They're not going to want to do it. They're going to fail on the terms. They're not going to deliver or execute properly. So you're going to have everyone upset with you on that side. The brand is going to be unhappy because it's not going to come off as authentic and real. So then they're going to feel like they were, got the short end of the stick. So I think it's important to really feel like what you're doing works for everybody involved in terms of production and also the brand, right? So you're a conduit. And then sometimes you also have to factor in the network, the studio, whoever else, make sure that you're in line with what their objectives are. The second part of it is, for me, where it's been the most successful is where we are helping people and changing people's lives. So, which happens all the time. Like, there's a lot, I've done $1 million deals that, to me, $1 million fee plus whatever, product integration, whatever it was we were doing, trade out, as we say, services. And, that can have its own higher reward. But on Queer Eye, we've done some really simple things. Like, there was a trans man who was getting for a suit, and, it was a whole situation with getting the right fit on suiting. We found a custom suit maker who was going to turn around that suit in time for us for 48 hours. And it was like one of the most emotional integrations, and, brand work that I've ever done. And again, like it was seamless.
It really was. I saw that episode.
We weren't forcing it through, right. So sometimes that's why even now brands are getting savvy because they understand the audience is savvy too. Everybody knows when they feel like they're about to watch something and they're like, that feels sponsored. When it feels authentic, you know, and it's natural, that's when it's the most successful. And then when there's a human element or component to it where you're actually helping somebody, where the audience can really connect and where it resonates with the audience, then it's a home run.
And that works great with reality and talk, harder sometimes with scripted.
True.
Yeah. Alma, what about you?
Well, I've been fortunate to be on both sides of this of the game. I started in PR and events, and having my public relations company started an independent film. And so I was working with, I launched the company for Howard and Karen Baldwin, who did the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx. And it was a privately funded, it cost $40 million. It was one of the largest independent films out there. But there are still, and because it was funded by Reshoots, you would think you'd have no problem with budget, but there are always problems. So you know, and then also there are creative problems with the director's vision, the executive producer's vision, and then you still have to bring in the money to buffer, you know, your P&A, and we didn't know who was going to buy the actual film. So I was able to bring in Jeep, and we were able to make a $2 million deal, and everything was great until the director started wanting to put Jeep in very strange scenes where the Jeep would get stuck. And all of a sudden, you know, Jeep, who's paying $2 million, keeps saying, we're not going to have that because we're trying to sell this cool car. So then how do you go about finding the safe zone where everybody's happy? The director's vision is not compromised and the money is still left in the bank, you know, so your production doesn't shut down. It turns out that people, when you go back and forth and you do have relationships, you are able to talk those things out. And what I find is important is to not just look at each situation. You know, you're creating relationships. So another example is I was able to launch Chobani Yogurt. I don't know if everybody knows about it, but Chobani Yogurt was, you know, just a no brand, you know, a Turkish guy with a vision. And so it turned out that when I was working on the film Precious, I was also launching a type 2 diabetes and obesity prevention program for girls and for kids in schools in New York City. This is where we were shooting Precious. It was also a privately funded film. It was $14 million. But at that point, again, you're still having issues with, you know, who's going to pay for the crew and, you know, who's going to feed the crew and all of that. So I was able to bring in Chobani, and while I was integrating them into my type 2 diabetes and obesity program that Katie Couric was involved with, they were happy. They were starting to get, you know, their name out there via Katie Couric, who is still on the Today Show. They were able to pay for, you know, production costs and some P&A and, you know, literally putting food in the hands of our crew while they were working. So you have to be creative and to make sure that if you have a small production, you're not just saying, hey, I just want this brand to pay me this amount of money so, you know, I could show two seconds of it in my film. You have to sort of have a forward vision of how you're going to give them the recognition they deserve, whether it's during, you know, production or post-production or marketing after, you know, the film is made, whether you build in publicity for them and give them other value that they could, you know, take home and say, this is how this has affected our growth. So there are many more examples like this, but those work.
What's P&A?
It's at the advertising budget. Yeah.
Justin.
I would echo everything pretty much they said. As far as campaign and music videos, I would go back to the Beats campaigns because, I mean, now it's part of Apple and it's just, it really worked, but it was organic because you had DJs and music artists putting on headphones, so it fit.
Which
but
they already needed.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then everything with, what you're saying about how brands always want more. And, and then I can speak to it on like the influencer level when we started Maker and we started trying some of these, brands for this YouTube star to talk about, like, we failed, but you learn a lot from your failures because it would be like, Snickers would be in the video and he would hold the Snickers up and he would like smash it or something, and then Snickers would be like, why did we pay all this money for him to smash it? Or if we wouldn't, we always needed the middle person to sort of like what the brand wants to do and then what they want to do and what the celebrity influencer wants to do is always two separate things, it feels like. So you need that person in the middle to massage it, because if they don't, if they read the copy that the brand does, then, this happened as well, where, all the comments from, it's almost worse in that space because it's all written out and you can see like the kids saying like, F Snickers, I'll never eat a Snickers again, and like it's getting thumbs up and everyone's agreeing, and you're a brand, you paid all this money and you're like, we paid money to have us tell people they're never going to eat it again, so you have to sort of find that middle ground of like, and I think it's case by case. It's not just, there isn't a cookie cutter like, here's what we'll do for everybody. It goes, everything from a feature film to all the way down to a YouTube video, like, who that person making that YouTube video is, and then what the story is in the feature film, like you have to, and the director and all these things you have to take into consideration, and so it's not, there's no formula that goes across all genres, and so you have to, massage everything, and the best ones are organic, and then secondary to organic, I would say the ones where like they're almost too obvious with it, and like in being obvious, like that they're getting paid. Like we found that actually at Maker to work. Like sometimes we would have some of them just say like, hey, I got paid $50,000 for this. Isn't that cool? And then they always be like, that's so cool, that brand paid you. So
Wait, that's Talladega Nights.
yeah, Talladega Nights. Yeah, see, yeah, that's that. I was trying to think of a movie example. Yeah, and
But
that's
then that's still transparent, so
It's
people
yeah.
don't feel like they're
It's
being.
authentic.
100%. Yeah, it's authentic, but it's more of like it's not. It's organic in a different way, but it totally works. So those are the two sort of things that I think work the best.
And, you touched on, I mentioned earlier in the last session, programmatic. That is why programmatic product placement and brand integration deals will never work, because it breaks the creative process. And so you can't just buy your way into any piece of content and just be like, magic, I'm going to buy this, and I'm looking at the audience numbers, and perfect. You actually have to have a conversation with the creators. And the other thing, Justin, that I love that you talked about is you need that middleman, because it is a different language. Productions and brands, it's like, it's not even Spanish and English. It's not even a romance language. It's just not. And
if it was up to producers, they would have at the end of their segment, and I can only speak to a talk show, this segment was sponsored by, but let me tell you, that doesn't work anymore. Brands don't
They'll
want
even ask for just like an end credit.
Literally,
They'll give you a
can't
credit.
we just give
Nobody-
them
the
an
credits
end
are rolling
credit?
by.
And nobody watches
Flying.
the credits. Let's be
Yeah,
honest.
I mean, producers on films, they want the money,
They-
but then they're like, well,
They're not willing to
we're
do
not-
anything.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something where the brand looks foolish, or and you're like, that's.
But if it's
not gonna
built
work.
in and they're already using it, then it's gonna happen, and it's all gonna fly regardless, so.
But you do need somebody who's Switzerland.
Yeah, who's
You need
managing
somebody
Switzerland.
who really understands both sides and can speak to both sides and be an advocate for both. Because for me, I am the biggest consumer. Like I love packaging more than I love the product itself. Like I mean, I've always been that way. You can ask my mom. My mom told me when I was 3, she took me into a lighting store because she's like, there's no way Courtney's gonna want something in here. Oh, hell yeah, I did. I found a light and I had to have that light. And then it was like, I've just always been that way. But I'm also a producer, and I also want to create great content, and I want it to feel organic, and I don't want to be so in your face. I just did an integration with this company, and I've found that the bigger companies you would think would be the most nitpicky. they're not. They're actually pretty easy. It's like, I just did one with Bounty. It was a walk in the park. They were like, we don't really want our, I had wrote something when I was pitching them about the quicker picker upper, and they're like, we don't want it too, in your face. I was like, no worries, because it won't be, but then I have smaller companies, and this is what you're going to experience, especially if you're a smaller production, wanting dollars, and you don't have big names attached, or you don't have a big network attached. You're going to have to get creative there. Wow, I just lost my train of thought. Literally.
I'll say, brands will sometimes even ask you, what's the ROI? They'll even say, what is going to be the return on my investment for doing this? They want to see sales the next day. And I'm not going to, there's times where you actually can see that. I'm not saying it's Home Shopping Network, but on Apprentice, they would showcase an ice cream and it would sell out in 2 days. Shark Tank, there's definitely things that are translating that you're seeing on Shark Tank, and everybody knows Oprah's favorite things, which was legendary, right? Who didn't watch that and then you wanted to shop? And it's the same thing with scripted too. When there's a beautiful actress and she's wearing a certain outfit or using a certain beauty product. So that's why I think there's a power in placement as well, because things can translate, but to say that you can deliver an exact formula and a return on someone's investment is completely impossible. And you can't.
Only if you never want to see that partner again.
Right. I would say also, as if you have content and you're working with the brand, also put some of it back on the brand. How are you going to promote your partnership with the relationship? Are you going to do something in store? Are you going to, if I give you a clip, or if we have even somebody on set taking pictures, because who can't take a high-res photo today on a set? Your associate producer can. If we're going to send you a picture,
is wonderful.
Right. What are you going to do with those pictures? Because if they think that we're like magicians and are going to unlock a secret door to sales the next day, then already you're getting people started on the wrong foot. It's all a partnership. That's why it's called an integration.
Partnership marketing.
I remember what I forgot. I'm sorry about my brain lapse.
I picked up for you.
I had a brand, so they're an online site. I won't name what it is. And they wanted to put B-roll, I'm sure most of you know what B-roll is, but video of their website in our monitor, and they were like, because we want people to see how you could put in, they had a promo code at the end of the segment. They were like, we want to see how you type in the promo code, see how they check out. I'm like, no. That to me is brands think that people don't know, which that's a really good way to think of it, because we always think people at home are stupid. You want to talk in layman's terms, because if you can't understand it, how can they, right? But with certain things like that, you have to have a middleman who's like, that's not going to work, and here's why it's not going to work, because you're going to turn viewers off. They're not going to want to go to your site, because they're going to be like, do they think I'm stupid? This was just clearly a commercial. Next. People don't want to watch commercials anymore, which is why I buy ad-free on Hulu. I mean, I don't like to watch commercials. I like to see brands, though, and I like to see in an organic way. So to touch on your point, when you're able to do something that is heart-wrenching and heartwarming and really impacts someone and changes their life, I one season gave away a home for the holidays, and let me tell you, there was not a dry eye in the audience. This woman and her 3 children were living in a shelter, a battered women's shelter, had completely lost everything. She had a job, but her job literally paid for what they had on their table, and that was it. But it was with this company called Pangea Real Estate, and you wouldn't have even known that there was a real estate company, yet you knew that this company did such an extraordinary thing that you wanted to support that business. And I feel like that's really where you can shine, is how do you create content, branded content, that makes people want to get involved.
So, we've been talking about different things that are in-screen, like on-screen, in-screen, and content. How do you take it beyond that? How do you create content besides the photo? Danielle, you mentioned, great, you can take a photo. Alma, you've done this. You've worked with brands. Mimi, you've certainly done this with promotions, and y'all all have. What are some good examples of how you've taken it from, okay, you're in the content, now let's get you beyond the content?
Well,
Go for it.
okay. I think that when you actually look at, I'll speak for film. I've done more film than television, and you take a look at the whole project. And since I come from a public relations background, I take a look at what can you use within the production that you could use even in post-production or in your marketing campaign, whether it's your content, whether it's your photos, whether it's your sometimes celebrity endorsement. They just happen to love a product, when it's available to them and they don't have any conflict. And sometimes often I've built in my own press around it. And I've been lucky when I was doing the film Precious to go from the very beginning through the Oscar campaign to the Oscars. And so I built in private dinners. I built in a partnership with a magazine. And so all of a sudden you create continuity, and that creates familiarity when it comes to your consumer. So you're not just going to see it. Maybe you won't ever catch a brand for the 2 seconds on screen, but then you're starting to associate the brand with certain, and if you're lucky, and if the film does well or your show does well, you're starting to associate that brand with the actual celebrities involved or the story, and that creates a lot of. I think that sometimes creates even more of a brand identity and than just the two seconds on screen.
And actually, that was something that I was saying earlier.
And recognition, yeah.
And I think that's actually very important. Like I said, I think a lot of times brands get very caught up in, am I getting my 2 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it is? And the reality is, if they do a good enough job taking the content, taking that IP, whatever it is. So if you're General Mills and you're working on How to Train Your Dragon and you're creating toys and you're doing a TV campaign and you're doing in-store and all of that, you don't need necessarily to be in the movie. You're going to get associated with that movie through all of that. And then yes, on the studio side, we can be doing some posts and hey, if you're a fan, you don't want to miss getting all these toys and make sure you collect them all. And you sort of collaborate on that, but I think to your point, it becomes very important, and I think you made this point as well, that as a brand, what are you doing to magnify that relationship and to fully take advantage of that partnership, whether you're in the movie, not in the movie for 2 seconds, in the movie for 10 minutes. If you don't do anything with it, it's not going to make much of a difference at all. I mean, probably short of Reese's Pieces with E.T., which was just kind of a fluke. And I'm sure M&M's still pissed that they didn't take them up on it. But, there's very few things that are going to sort of jump out if you don't do the other things that come along with that.
You have to maximize the opportunity. So if you have a publicist, make sure that publicist it knows everything that's going on with, if you're choosing to do a TV activation, that they know the whole content and they can write a press release and shoot that off and get it out there so that everybody can be aware of it. And so there's continuity on every level. You have to buy paid social, boost post, retweet. If you've worked out a deal where you can give social, make sure you tag that brand as a partner so that they can, brands have millions of followers. They are just as much a help as you are to them. So I think that's the most important thing, is really making sure you're maximizing the opportunity. Because
But also for digital and for short form content, or for independent films, the advantage there is that you have a little bit more leeway with the content. So, you may have more leeway with the content than necessarily a network production. So you
Or
can,
Netflix.
Right. Netflix, very little. Very little leeway. But, you know, if it's your independent film, or if it's like your project that you're getting off the ground, or a music video, like I get called about music videos all the time. You know, there's two things that you have going for you, which is, number one, you can go niche, which is great, because sometimes when you speak to a niche audience, like, everyone in the world is calling Coca-Cola, like what you said before, don't call Coca-Cola, but when you're, even have narrow it down to a specific demographic, you know, we know this is gonna appeal to, it could be so specific, like when I did RuPaul, but, you know, for music videos, sometimes it's a very specific audience too. Latin, where we're doing something that's gonna target LGBTQ. That, you know, brands that will just want to do that, and that may appeal to them. That can be a huge advantage. And then you can service them with more content to use. So then they can use it on their digital and social. They can be more involved, and everybody wants stuff to push out today, right? Everybody wins. That's your advantage there.
I did an integration with iHome, and in this segment, Steve is hilarious, right? But he's funnier off screen, and we have editors for a reason. You guys saw Miss Universe, I'm sure. My boss doesn't know how to say names all the time, and then he goes off on a tangent. But in this case, he was hilarious, and we were showcasing their new Aquio water bottle, which is a speaker and water bottle in one, which is cool. So we had this model, fitness model, on a treadmill, and she was like tiny and little, and he's like, and she was just kind of like doing a slow walk, because obviously we weren't gonna have a run on there. And he was like, only if you look that good are you going that slow. Otherwise, your ass needs it. He's like, let me show you. So he gets on there, and he starts running, and he's like, see, this is how you fucking do it. And he's cussing in there, and we're like, obviously this is not gonna make it. I'm telling the iHome client, I'm like, don't worry. They're like, no, we love it. I'm like, well, I can't keep it on because NBC won't keep it. But here's what I will do. I'll cut that clip, and I'll give it to you guys to use for social media. It was just a great way to give a client who, you know, paid a good amount of money for their integration and add an added bonus, right? And yeah, they started posting that, and people just were dying over it. So those behind the scenes clips are really, you know, can be really helpful as well.
So another question for you all, because I know this is something that's top of mind for everyone who's sitting here, is, Justin, we're going to start with you, since you managed to do this with a documentary. How do you find the brands? How do you find the money? How do you find the trade-offs? How do you figure out who to reach out to, and where do you dial for dollars?
Google. It's going back to organic, and like what, you know, looking at your, you know, content, whatever it is, whether it's a feature film, a documentary, whatever, and seeing like where, you know, what would even make sense, you know, like if, you know, you don't want to obviously waste your time or the brand's time reaching out to someone that makes no sense, because, you know, and you have to have an idea. So from my documentary, it's on a pair of identical twins that are also two of the most iconic professional surfers in the sport. It's on their lives as being twins in the same sport, but they're from Florida, and they're from a place called just east of Orlando, and there's the Space Coast is what it's called, because that's where they launched. Elon Musk launched the rockets and stuff. So there was a Space Coast Board of Tourism that one of the twins was already sort of in touch with. So it just made sense to, you know, we got in touch with them, and we said, hey, look, if, you know, we'll say Space Coast this many times in our movie, and it is organic to the film because that's where they're from. So when Daniel Tosh is like, you know, they're from the, you know, Space Coast of Florida, is not saying anything that doesn't make sense, because that's really where they're from. But people don't actually refer to that area that much as the Space Coast of Florida. So, you know, we did that, and we got money for that, and it worked too, because we've done some, you know, some focus group screenings and some screenings here in LA, and I actually had a couple film producers I showed it to. One of them, during the movie, told me he Googled what Space Coast was, and he's like, that place looks really cool, I might take my family there this summer. So I told the Space Coast people, I'm like, here we go, we already have proof of concept. Like, someone didn't know what it was, they heard it, he's looking at maybe a family vacation there. So, you know, that's where I would say, like, you know, like, whatever you're making, and, you know, that's where you want to start, and then from there, you know, whatever contacts you have, you know, people you might know, or sometimes you can just reach out cold, you never know nowadays, so.
Alma, you are really good at going in a different direction than I think a lot of people do for looking for funding sometimes. Because you don't necessarily go brand direct, you go kind of executive.
Yeah, I think, and you have to start with your relationships. And so fostering, if there's one thing I have to say is fostering relationships is very important, because even if, and asking questions of the people that you know are professional in this field, because even if they don't represent someone or a brand or a company that could help you now, they could tell you where to go, and you go directly to the top person rather to the who can give you a very quick yes or no, or can refer you to another source. So I think, first of all, though, you have to know what your brand is, what you've got to sell, how you're going to make it worthwhile to anybody. So you have to know your product. And you walk in the door and you want to know why you are different than anybody else who's knocking on that person's door or that brand's door. And have a plan A, B, or C, because like as we talked, if you're looking for a certain amount of money, that's your ideal, and the company can't afford it, or they don't think it's a worthwhile investment. But then you sit back and you have a plan B where you go, how can I mitigate my cost? And that's a very real cost. So you may not be getting $1 million or $10,000, but you may be getting that in trade, and that's your craft service, and then you start working from that level onto what are you going to deliver to the brand in the long run. If you're starting from ground zero and you're wanting to finish a film or a TV show or a pilot, what are you going to deliver to that brand? And then also make sure that when you're having this conversation, know what you're going to be getting from that brand sort of during the lifespan of your project. So and build it into your contract as well, because people change their minds along the way as well. So you don't want to wind up in the middle of a production and the brand says, "Oh, I'm pulling out because I'm tired of it," or "I got a better deal somewhere else."
They get distracted with bright, shiny objects all the time. You want
all
a contract.
the time. So I think being creative and starting with your relationships and making sure that whether you Google or you go to, I usually go to the people that I know, and I don't take no for an answer. I just say, well, if you can't help me, who can?
Right.
And that's your direct line to getting funded for whether it's your film, your television, your pilot, short form. I think that's my take no for an answer. Don't take no for an answer, I mean.
Mimi, what about you?
I mean, for me, it comes down to having a strategy, sort of, okay, we have this, whatever the property is, okay, who's our audience, what's our strategy, what makes sense, what's the pitch for each of these. So we will typically create a pitch list and have some idea of what the pitch is, right? So it depends on the property, obviously. But I never call someone and just say, "Oh my God, we have this great movie, you're gonna love it." There's always sort of a why. This is why I'm calling you. This is why I think it's a fit for you. So, and then it's, either I know someone at that company or I figure out how to get to someone at that company. But I never call someone without the why.
Daniela?
I would agree with being relentless, but not delusional. So, right, because sometimes people in Hollywood, they mistake those two things. And they keep it going. It's like, no.
You're like, okay,
They just don't understand.
Boundaries.
Right, because then you're never going to go anywhere. But also, I'm going to say, I think we covered all of, when you're coming in the door with a big project, but if you're not coming in with a door with a big project, I had some friends come to me recently with a great show that they'd put together in Nashville. No, Memphis. And they had the cast put together, they had everything, they wanted to package this show, and they were thinking about how to sell it and how to reach out to brands. And my advice for them and for a lot of people who aren't necessarily connected is, don't forget to think locally too. Like, look around you and think at local businesses that may have a budget and want to get involved. It doesn't always have to be Fortune 500 companies and big brands and Google. It can be like, who is everybody, you know, especially if it's a specific project, right? And it's going to appeal to a certain audience. If it's stoner skater kids, then you know exactly like where they're going in, you know, eating or hanging out. Go to those brands and see if they want to be in the movie or help you out or participate, and, you know, reach that segment of the population. Because the great thing is right now with digital, you can get a huge audience, like a bigger audience than you would even get on network TV. And you can argue that too, you know? So, and I think it's great to work locally. That was my...
But you're going to need, if you're going to go digital, you're going to need to be able to actually tell the brand what your plan is. It's not just like, we're going to blow up and be viral. Right. You need to actually tell them, okay, you know, we are doing this. We're going to supplement, as Courtney mentioned, we're going to boost post. We are going to have an actual strategy for what we're doing with our digital campaign. Super important to
But
do.
even if you're aligned with an influencer today, it's like a friend of mine said, like, brands will give you a hard time about spending an integration fee on a network show, but then they're writing checks left and right to be associated with influencers. So all of a sudden you have somebody in your project that has like a great footprint on social media, and now you have an argument for why you're bringing in a sponsor.
Courtney, what about you?
I mean, they touched on everything that I would want to say as well. Find a decision maker and be relentless in that pursuit. So for me, press releases are some of my best friends because I find contacts on there because I know if there is a publicist on there or an agency, chances are I'm going to get to the right person. So if a publicist is not the right person, I'm like, who is? Go on LinkedIn, find a contact, reach out to them. The worst somebody can say is no. That's it. Say, okay, cool. All right, nice to talk to you. Can I hit you up later? You know, keep a relationship because, you know, relationships are everything. It's your bread, it's your butter, it's your livelihood. And, you know, I can't tell you how many no's I've been given and I didn't give up. And they would say to me, Courtney, thank you. They would say to me, Courtney, you know, just, you know, keep us posted, like keep us in mind next opportunity. I was like, okay. For example, Google, I had wanted them for years and I was going after them. They kept telling me, no. And this was just trade. This wasn't even money. The first season on Steve, I mean, I would call them and say, hi, I'm Courtney Jackson. I'm calling from Steve Harvey. They're like, is that guy with the mustache? And I was like, and he's like, the bald-headed guy. I'm like, yeah, him. To now, I call him, people like, oh my God, I love Steve Harvey. But it was a struggle at first. So have a relationship, build that relationship. Once I kept on going after this Google contact, I would send flowers, just thinking of you, just buttering them up. And then one day I was like, okay, I want to do a Google gift guide. It will be all Google. I call her on the phone. I'm like, I have this great idea. It's going to be Google branded. We're going to do a Google Chrome. We're going to do a Google Chromebook. We're going to do everything. And here's the messaging. And we're going to get this kid coder in there because he's so Anyways, I finally closed the deal, and it took 2 years. So be relentless. Keep that relationship and find a contact, find somebody who can, give you an answer. Don't waste your time though. If you're just spinning in circles and they're just spinning, if they're just like, oh, well, let me get back to you later and later, go on to something else because there are many fish in the sea. There are many brands who are dying to do more work and get more content. So find those brands and for me, what I do is I will put a list together of a ton of different brands I want to go after, and I just call them. Here, I would have to say, the one thing that, as a producer, that I can't stand more than anything is when somebody wants to pitch me and they send me a novel, right? Hi, Courtney, blah, 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 and I'm like, you lost me. tell them what you're actually wanting. Say, hey, can you jump on a call? Can we talk about this? Here's a short thing I want to talk about. Don't waste their time, because really you're going to be wasting your time too if they're not interested. You know what I mean? So be efficient and be precise with what you want. That's what I would say.
And we're getting close, if not there, to the end of this, but I wanted to see, does anyone have any questions? Of course, yes.
So I have worked with marketing companies to work on a TV show, and I've gotten offers, but they're really crappy offers. But in order to get them, I was like sending them cakes. Like, I had bakeries delivering cakes with like Audi and a different brands with their names on the cake. So I'm curious, like, what do you mean by
And this is you pitching brands?
Yeah, 'cause I have celebrities already like attached. I have like, a few celebrities and they're big names. So I try to bring in brands to pay for the actual content. So Audi gave me a crappy deal.
But they gave you a deal.
They gave me a deal. And that's
Start
why
there.
I would just start with that. They wanted to integrate the car
That's
into the
good.
scene.
Perfect. Prove yourself, and then give them something that's so valuable, and then how can you one up it the next time?
Right.
Yeah, grow the relationship, I would
Yeah.
say. As long as if you got in, then you need to grow that relationship and realize that, like I said, you have plan A, B, or C, but as long as you're in there and you know the minimum of what you want, and if that's helpful to you, then like Stacy said, prove yourself, and then the next deal, now you've created a relationship where you're also showing integrity in what you're doing, and that's really important. Don't do a bait and switch on them either, and then that grows a relationship, I think.
I would say set some limits, because if you,
Oh, yeah.
if you give them the gold package,
You're
they
never
don't
gonna-
respect. Then they're gonna
100%.
expect the gold package for nothing next time. So you say, hey, I'm really thrilled that you came to the table. I can't give you what that because I need to fill my coffers with this, but I can give you this, and it will be great content, and I'll deliver it on time, and it'll be great, and we can start our relationship. So you kind of want to balance. You want to make sure, and
You want to have
clear.
room to scale.
Yeah.
You need to value your content, right? Because a lot of times there will be agencies that will pitch me and they want to come on for free. And I say, well, would you go into a store? If you go to Nordstrom, would they give you a free top? No. So I'm not going to give you a free space here. If you want to be a part of it, you obviously know that we are valuable. So be able to give exposure that matches the dollar amount, because that way you can upsell them later. That way when you're going back and you're like, because you did such a great job on that small one, if they loved it, then say, hey, I know that you love this. Why don't we try this now? It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it will be worth it. I guarantee they'll do it, because remember, if you did a great job on that small job, they're going to trust you to do a great job on a big job.
Oh, one more quick thing. When you speak to other brands, say you've worked with Audi.
Exactly.
Totally.
I want them to take the
Yeah.
crappy deal, just so they
Yeah.
can be the first, and
Yeah.
everyone else can,
As long as it doesn't cost you money,
I need insurance to drive the car.
Because then you have a proven
Yeah.
record
Yeah.
that you've already been working with brands, which will make other brands feel comfortable working with you.
Right.
Case studies, I've never been sorry for doing a case study where I've pretty much worked for free, because if you can package it and you can turn it into a cool piece of content later on, and I'm not saying work for free, but I'm saying I have never been sorry when I've gone down that path, because it's leveraged me into six-figure deals.
And Audi's a good brand name.
Such a big one.
Yeah.
Yes.
The deal was so crappy.
You have to always think longevity.
Yeah.
It can't just be this one-off, because if you're expecting a one-off, that's what they're expecting, and you're never going to work with each other again. You have to look at partners. Think about this as a partnership, because that way, no matter where you go, they'll follow you.
Yeah, you can even say, I really appreciate you coming to the table. I'm disappointed that you weren't able to do more, but I really want to work with you. So let's look at this as the start of something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, go for it.
Thank you. You guys mentioned an integration fee earlier. I wanted to know, is that a percentage or is that
it's hard dollars. So it all ranges from big blockbuster movies to talk shows. If you are on a major network, for us at Steve, our starting rate is $100,000 for a 4 to 6 minute segment. So, and how we justify that is based off of the media rate. So if an advertiser's coming in and they want to buy or purchase a 30-second ad, they're going to be spending $35,000 for that 30 seconds. So if we're giving you that 6 minutes exposure, that's how we value it.
And on the film side, we just make it up.
For real. Yeah, for real.
We do.
Every
Depends on what
figure.
you think you can get, and then you scale it from there.
Yeah. You start high, know that you might have to go lower.
Yeah.
And you're
Always start higher and then go,
Well, and that's how you can scale back your exposure too, because if you go to a brand, and so if there's a fee, right, let's say, just to go back to your question too, I would always come to the table if you have a client and say, here's what I have to spend. I have $50,000. This is ideally what I would like. And then that way, somebody on the other side can be like, okay, for $50,000, here's what I can do. And then you got room to be like, but can I get this too? Because it's a done deal, but can I get this too? And the chances are they're going to want to work with you. They're going to want those dollars. They're going to say yes, for the most part.
So should we look at the integration fee as another type of sponsorship? It's just called an integration fee?
It's advertising in a much more organic way. It's a way that you can get involved with a big celebrity without that big dollar amount attached to it. Because if you, let's say, were coming to me to work with Steve Harvey, that's a 7-figure deal, right? But you're coming to the Steve show, that's $100,000, right? So in comparison, you're getting a great deal. I'll give you an example. My friend Emily Kaufman is over here. She is the travel mom. She does a ton of television. Emily and I work with Sandals Corporation, Unique Travel, and Sandals, I only did trade outs with them for years. And I'm sure any one of these ladies can tell you, it's hard to turn a trade out into a paying client. So Emily and I, we've been working together now for, 7 years, Emily? She was a correspondent on our show in Chicago, and we would always do these great travel segments together. Well, Sandals wanted to work with Steve, right? But Steve requires a lot of money. And Steve also wants ownership because Oprah told him one day that, Steve, whatever you put your name on, you need to own some of it. So he had it in his mind, I gotta own this. So now he wants a piece of everything. It's not gonna happen everywhere, right? No matter how big you are, some companies are just not gonna give up real estate. So Emily came to me and said, okay, I have this budget. Sandals really wants to work with Steve. What could we do? I was like, I think we were just talking about like why it wasn't working. And I was like, why don't we do something on the show? Why don't we just blow it up big for them? Because usually with a trip giveaway, it's standard exposure. You get a verbal mention, you get a few photos on there, you get an end credit, and you get a logo on our website. But I was like, Emily, we'll blow this up. We will create a whole Sandals cabana area. We'll bring in sand. I'll have palm trees. Emily, you'll be there. You'll be able to talk a little bit more organically about like the functionality of the properties and what they have involved. Anyways, we went to Sandals, Emily and I, and we closed them. And it was a big deal because they've never been a paying client before.
Your points to expand. I'm on the other side. I'm an independent. I think I do what everybody else does here. I don't work for Steve Harvey. I work for the travel mom who is me. And I look like I'm a big company because I go to the Steve Harveys and say, hey, I got this. And we took that and blew it up. Sandals used it internally. They promoted to their company. Look at what we did with Steve Harvey. They promoted to the industry. They did a big, huge press release. Look at what we did with Steve Harvey. So it was like Courtney said, the win, 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 win.
We did Instagram posts. We did Insta stories. You can even offer Facebook Live. It's such a great way to, have something behind the scenes where it feels hot and cool. Back to Stacey's point of like, you want that. A brand wants to feel cool. They want to feel important. So like, how can you make them feel cool? You got to just think outside of the box. And yeah, I mean, that was a big win.
But to further address your question, an integration
totally off
fee
topic?
could be, it sort of can be used interchangeably with the word product placement fee. A lot of times it's the same thing.
Sorry about that.
It's like, it was like a segment feature, but it was beyond a product placement.
Right.
In that case, yeah, right, and that's
Delineation.
that's the difference.
The integration typically refers to when the product's being integrated or used, and a product placement fee is we're just holding the product and we're charging you a fee.
Or it's in the background.
It's in the background, right. So
If
there's
something-
passive placement and active. integration.
Heightened, if something is heightened, right? You're going extra above and beyond. It's not just that the product is there. I mean, this could, from the right content, get dollars. But, you know, this and being like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be more likely to get dollars.
You're creating a story.
And there's so many different levels depending on where you go, but if you're working with Mimi at DreamWorks, it's gonna be a lot more money than a talk show, that's for sure.
Do you have a level what?
Not even gonna have it.
Unless Jeffrey decides it's gonna happen, and then it's
Because you have guests on the show.
Absolutely. So there, and I'm just going to be transparent here. If you're a big brand, you're not going to be coming on the show without paying. But if you're a small brand, let's say you're a woman entrepreneur, you started up your own business.
You have charcoal toothpaste
Yes,
called My Magic Mud.
right.
Because we just did this.
Seriously, we did it. This is a great example. So we had a story that came on. A man was wrongly convicted for. Now I'm forgetting.
Doesn't matter.
It was like 29 years. He was wrongly convicted of rape and murder. And the Innocence Project was working with this man for 12 years. And all they needed was to test DNA. Literally for 12 years, they were just begging the courts to test for DNA. And they finally said yes, 12 years later. The DNA matched with a serial rapist that was already in jail and automatically set this guy free. So this guy has nothing, right? I mean, he literally is coming out of jail with nothing. He's in his late 60s now. He's lost a majority of his life. And we needed a giveaway, and I needed like $5,000, right? So I called Stacy and Chelsea, and I was like, do you guys have a brand that could be a good fit for this? I'm like, here's the story, and it's really difficult to find brands when you have anything with incarceration, because they automatically think, oh shit, I don't want to tie my brand to that. It could be bad PR for me. But in this case, it was like, come on, let's rally behind it. So Stacy and Chelsea were like, we have this brand called My Magic Mud. They are all about helping people and uplifting them. I'm going to ask them. It's a stretch, but I'm going to ask them.
We thought they'd say no, honestly.
Literally. And then all of a sudden, they said, we would love to help. And we did it, and we did a nice logo on a big check. And it was great, and the brand benefited from it. So there are opportunities other than paying big fees if you're a smaller company.
Yeah.
So in that case, did they have to pay anything because they were giving?
They paid $5,000
for the
to the guest. So that was a trade.
So we have hit the max of time for some of our panelists, and I'm sure some of our audience members. Thank you guys so much. And guys, I cannot thank you enough for giving your time. Thank you.